I love reading journal prompts is because they're going to elevate your child into higher level thinking skills. Welcome to Epic Mom Life. I am your host, Kara Peterson. This show is sponsored by The Possum's Tale, a unique book adventure for your 6 to 12-year-old child. Let's jump into today's show. Today we're going to talk about reading journals. They can be great for homeschoolers. They can be great over the summer. They're just great to have. Plus, I'm going to talk to you about reading journal prompts, and I'm going to give you 18. The reason I love reading journal prompts is because they're going to elevate your child into higher level thinking skills, which is just wonderful. So why should you use reading journals? What are they good for? They can be an effective tool for promoting reflective writing, critical analysis, and enhancing reading comprehension. Simply put, by using a reading journal, your child will actually engage, not just have the text happen to them, but they're going to engage with the text on a deeper level. So what is a reading journal? A reading journal is a tool that helps children document and reflect on the books they read. That sounds simple, right? It is used to engage with the book by recording observations, thoughts, and questions. Or students can draw pictures, or write favorite poems, or quotes, or anything they want about their readings. What are the benefits to using a reading journal? Reading journals incorporate writing, so they are improving your writing skills. They also help reduce writing anxiety because the child is given a writing prompt, oftentimes a reading journal prompt, like, what did you connect with this week? Or something like that. And so it helps reduce their anxiety, and it's very informal writing. Like I said, they can copy a quote from the book. They can do all kinds of things. So it helps alleviate a lot of feelings about pressure of what to write, and it isn't a formal type. So a lot of students like to write better. By recording their thoughts, children are actively engaging in self-reflection and increasing their critical thinking skills. Yay! I love increasing my critical thinking skills. They are also better able to remember the book and its events because they wrote it down. So we've heard a whole bunch of learning about using two different styles of learning. So they're using visual by reading, and then they're using tactile by writing. These journals can be fun to read later. As your child grows, they see not only their educational journey, but what they thought was important in relation to their lives through the connections they made at that time. How do I choose a reading journal? There are a lot of different kinds of reading journals available. First, consider your child. How old are they? What are their interests? How do they best learn? If your child is very young, you will want a very simple journal with larger fonts and illustrated pages. If your child is more creative, you may want a journal that encourages creative expression and has room for illustrations or drawings, maybe has blank pages. You may have a child who loves organization. There are reading journals designed with this child in mind as well. The big decision will first be to tackle, is it going to be a digital reading journal or is it going to be a paper reading journal? There are many journals, there are many apps and digital journals available if your child prefers technology. Some journals actually offer online communities where homeschoolers can share their experiences and connect with others using the same journal. To me, this says oversight, because if your child is online participating in these communities, and depending on how old your child is, then you really need to pay attention. Me, I like simplicity. Simplicity is my friend. You can go out and buy a reading journal. You can also create one. I love those composition books. You know, when all the school supplies are for sale in, I think it's August, and then I think in the middle of September, they all go clearance. Like you can get all of those, like I have these big pens that are my favorite pen in the whole wide world. There's 10 of them in the package. And during the school sale, supply sale, I think they're $1 for 10. Once they go clearance, they're 10 cents for 10. So once that happens, the composition books, they are 50 cents a piece. Fabulous reading journals. Now, they don't have the blank pages, which is the only thing. But if your child can draw on lined paper, 50 cents is a bargain. I use these composition books for everything. I take them on the airplane so we can use them for card game scores. I can write my thoughts in them. I write all of my blogs when I'm doing my rough drafts and my research. I use these for everything. And I have different ones that I put white labels on, you know, like trip here or webinars, so that all my webinar notes are in them. I use them for anything. Your child can decorate the cover and make it their own. How did I use reading journals in my classroom? In 52 spring writing prompts, and there's a link to that in the notes, I quickly went over how to establish a writing routine in your classroom, homeschool classroom. Many of the ways to develop continuity for writing are the same for developing continuity for reading. With a reading journal, you're blending the two because you're reading and you're writing. 1, establish a consistent schedule. I recommend that your child, based on your child's age, reads a certain amount of minutes every single day. It is helpful if your child knows this happens, roughly at the same time each day. Obviously, things are going to come up. Like if you say, we're always going to read a half hour before bed, and then one day, you know, you have a picnic over at a friend's house, and you guys get home late. Okay, we understand all those things happen. But this is just something that you're trying to establish every day. 2, create a dedicated space for reading. I think I have told you all about my cuddle chair. This is also where we always read at night when I read to the boys aloud. And then once the boys got older, where we all had our own books, but we all piled in the chair and we read. This was always dedicated to reading. Your child must have a specific space to read that they feel comfortable in. I will also put a link to create a book nook in the notes. Know your goals and objectives. This is key with the reading journal. What do you want your child to get out of their journal? Like, you don't want to do a reading journal if you think, oh, that sounds like a fabulous idea, I'll just do that. What are you actually trying to get out of it? Because do you want them to reach higher level thinking skills? This is the one that I think is so amazing. They can read anything. They can read Diary of a Wimpy Kid, which is not my favorite, but I am thrilled they are reading, and you can get them to reach those higher level thinking skills, which to me puts that Diary of a Wimpy Kid right there on the that's okay to read list, because we're getting what we need to get out of it. Do you want them to engage with their reading? That's an absolutely, I do. I want them to actually not just have it happen to them, but I want them to engage. Do you want them to have a better understanding of what they read? As an aside, a lot of children can be fabulous readers, but they really have a hiccup when it comes to nonfiction. And that's why do you want them to understand what they are reading is really important, because up until 3rd grade, and remember, a lot of kids aren't super great readers at 3rd grade, and I honestly wouldn't panic so much, because it happens. To me, it's a happens thing. However, if you're in the typical school system, this does happen, and this is going to cause a little bit of panic. Once 4th grade happens, a lot of their other subjects, namely history and science, those are taught to them through reading. So now they're reading nonfiction to learn nonfiction. So if they have difficulty reading and understanding nonfiction, they're going to have a difficult time in school because their subjects are now taught to them through reading. I hope that makes sense. So to me, a major goal would be, do you want them to understand what they're reading? That would be yes. If your child has difficulty with reading, a reading journal that simply summarizes everything that they read that day, evening, week, or whatever is great, because they get caught up the next day before they start reading again. And summarizing is not a higher level thinking skill. However, I don't have the percentage right now, but a huge percentage of kids have difficulty with nonfiction. So if you're doing a nonfiction book for the kids, that's what they're reading, I would say just doing a reading journal of the nonfiction and listing facts that they figured out might be a really great reading journal. 4, using journal prompts. I love using prompts. For every, say, 5th chapter or 5th day of reading, like once a week, having a specific reading journal prompt. For the everyday writing, have your child write an impression, a thought, a quote, something like that that they just liked from their reading. This is also a great place for them to write any words they did not know. If they're reading a word that is at their grade level, then the calculation we were taught is that they should not be regularly using one word every, say, 20 words. Now, that doesn't mean they don't know that word, but that isn't a word that they're so comfortable with they're using it regularly. Like, say the word irony is in the sentence. That may be that they may know what irony is, but they may not be comfortable with it enough to use it. So they can start seeing words and not know, they can write down words that they don't use regularly or words that they absolutely don't know. Now, in that same vein, how many adults do you know are actually reading at their age level or grade level, right? I mean, but that's just for instance, in case you're curious. Use the once a week reading journal prompts to dive deeper. 5, talk with your child. Have your child share their impressions and their thoughts that they're so excited to actually write in their reading journal every now and then. Let them know you value their opinion and you are excited to hear what they are getting out of their reading. 6, let your child choose their own books. There are times when you need to encourage your child to read a new genre, a certain classical book, or I'm seriously going to tell you and help you and encourage you, have your child read some nonfiction. However, whenever possible, allow your child to choose books that they want to read. This will increase their motivation and excitement about the entire process. How is a reading journal different from a reading tracker? I have a link to the reading tracker in my notes, and I did a whole thing on that one too. This is a fabulous question because it's kind of confusing, right? It's a reading tracker, so you're keeping track. It's a reading journal, so you're keeping track. Reading trackers are used to simply record the books and the authors that you read, and when you've read them, usually a lot of times there's a date, and then they usually have a rating system. The reading tracker template that I put with the reading tracker also has a brief summary, just because I like to put down why I gave it the 3 stars, the 4 stars, the 5 stars, or whatever. Because oftentimes I'll read a book, like there's this one series, I think I'm on 28 in the series, but that means it takes a long time for 29 to come out or 30 to come out. Well, I love that series, but I forget because there's another series, and I think I'm on, 18 of that series, but I think all of them have come out of that one. That one I just read if I'm bored. That one isn't that great, but I get them all messed up. So I like to kind of review who the main character is and everything, and then I can keep track. Trackers are very handy if you're a voracious reader, and you can't keep track of what you've actually already read. So, reading journals are very different. A reading journal creates an interactive reading experience. The student writes in their journal as they're reading. They record their thoughts, their likes, their dislikes, the connections they have, the questions they have, anything that comes up while they're reading. Higher order thinking skills. This is what really thrills me. A reading journal can take just reading to the next level. Just reading is in the knowledge category, which is the lowest level on Bloom's taxonomy. I love looking at Bloom's taxonomy, so we're going to veer over there for a minute. Bloom's taxonomy, now this is a huge mouthful of words, so I'm going to go slow so you can kind of get it. Bloom's taxonomy is a classification, so it's like a way of grading different objectives and cognitive skills in education. So you're looking at goals and you're looking at how much it takes the brain to get to those goals in education. I think that's how I break that down. I'm going to go through each of the categories, give a brief description of them, and then I'm going to give you a couple of reading journal prompts to go with them so that you can see what they would look like maybe in your child's journal. Knowledge. This is the foundation. This is the very bottom level, but it's an important level. Like I said, if you're doing nonfiction, this would be the level that you might want to hang out in until your child is very comfortable with this. Words that you would see very commonly in the foundational level are words like recall, list, summarize. Those are at this level. Reading journal prompts. List the characters you met this chapter in your book. Identify the setting of the story. What are 3 new words you read? Were you able to determine the meaning based on context clues of those words? The next level, comprehension. Now your child is going to demonstrate some understanding. Words you will see at this level are explain. Now, a lot of people put summarize into this level. I think that if you're going to put summarize in this level, you have to go more than just regurgitation of the plot. That's my personal opinion. All of those book reports where students just had to write a summary of the book, that is this level. And again, if it's not simply just the knowledge, but it's definitely not any higher than this level. And the reason I point that out is because it really bothered me. I taught 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and I would see so many. I'm sorry, I'm not an artsy craftsy person, but I thought that these teachers would go so far out. They try really hard to make reading fun and creative, and they do cereal box book reports, and they do diorama book reports, and all of these book reports, and all of them had list the setting, list the characters, list the plot, list the, and I was like, a 3rd grader could do this. You know, I'm teaching 8th grade, and I was on a team, and you want me to do a stupid cereal box because you think it's cute, but you're not asking these 8th graders to actually be 8th graders. You're telling them to get out their arts and crafts and their little, glue paste and do what a 3rd grader can do. So no, this level, if your child is reading a book that they really enjoy, say they love Harry Potter, they should be able to go to higher levels. And the reading journal prompts you will see are not very hard, but just regurgitating what happened is easy. It's very easy to grade, it's very easy to assess, all of that, but it, to me, doesn't require a lot. So, knowledge, I have to get back to where I was. So comprehension, it's better than the foundation, but we're going to go a little bit more. And so we're going to say things like identify the problem or the theme in the book, because those are harder things to see. Predict, ooh, this is really good. I like this a lot better. I want you to predict what will happen based on what you've read so far. Explain why you think a character made a certain decision. The next one, the 3rd, is application. Okay, now this is where learning gets really exciting for me. Your child has a foundation and they have an understanding, and now we're going to have them apply that knowledge. Often this level will start with how would you? Reading journal prompts. What other way could your main character have solved that problem? So not the way they solved it. I want you to come up with a different way. What changes would have to be made to this story if the setting were 200 years in the past, or if it were 200 years into the future? If you were any character in the book, which one would you be? And then, how would you handle this situation differently? And you can either identify the situation or you could say the main issue or whatever. So to me, those are much more exciting questions, and they're making your child think a whole lot harder. Analysis. 4. This is where we break the big down to smaller chunks and we make connections to other things. Now that's an interesting thing. So you would think that higher level thinking is going to make you sweat and it's going to mean you're super, super smart and it's going to take all kinds of efforts. No, actually, connections means it's a higher level of thinking, but it isn't necessarily that much harder. Your child will logically make connections. They want to make connections. They're doing that every day in their reading journal when they're saying, like they're reading Alice in Wonderland, okay? And they're like, oh, I've fallen asleep while I've read a book before. Oh, I've seen a rabbit. Those are connections. Those are taking them out of their book and making it real to them in their lives. Compare and contrast or analyze are common concepts at this level. Reading journal prompts. Did this remind you of anything happening in your life? Or, outside of the book, you are wanting them to make a connection between the book and something else. Analyze the structure of the story. How did the author organize the events? Did they use flashbacks, foreshadowing, or other narrative techniques? What do they think of that? I have read books where authors have very cleverly used flashbacks, and it's been used very well. Or I read, I think it was the Poisonwood Bible, where they had 4 daughters, and each daughter had their own chapter, and the characterization, the voice was so good it worked. But then I've read authors that have tried to do different characters, and you couldn't tell one character from another. Or they've used flashbacks, and I couldn't tell if I was in the past or in the present. So I would have a lot to say about a technique. So I think that's a great question. What motive did the main character have for doing or behaving the way they did? So a lot of times we're reading and we see a character do something, but a lot of times we don't question why they're doing it. So now we're going to analyze why they did that. Evaluation. 5. Children naturally fall into this. It's their opinion. Almost every single child has an opinion and wants to tell you what it is. However, at this level, not only are they going to give you their opinion, but you're going to help them develop that a little bit further. You want your child to not only have it, but you also want them to defend why they have that opinion and support it with evidence from the book. Words like justify, decide, and assess are great words in this category. Reading journal prompts. Is the title for this book or story a good one or a bad one, and why? Evaluate the effectiveness of the ending of the story. Did it wrap up the plot and leave you satisfied as a reader? I don't know if you've read any romance novels, but sometimes I'll read them to kind of like wash my mind of all the craziness out there. I swear to Rudy, a lot of these romance novel writers, they always go for the easy fix, right? Like, oh, and then she got pregnant, and then this happened, or this. It's like they all do the same canned ending or whatever. And so a lot of times I would have something to say about that. I would say, like, I've read a couple where it's been totally different. I've been like, oh, I love that. Provide specific examples from the text about why you do or do not think that the plot ended well. If all of your characters were facing a natural disaster and you could only save one character, why would you save that one? Synthesis. This is the final one. Your child has taken in new information and now they need to create something new. Remember those darn science boards? At the very beginning, you had to have a hypothesis, and then you had to try to prove it. Hypothesize is one of the words for this category. Your child will take what they have gleaned from their readings, connections, and their opinions, and then they will hypothesize or create or think something related, but they're going to do something new. Reading journal prompts. Create a new ending or beginning to the book story that you like better, but that will also be true to the characters and who they are. Rewrite the book from a different character's point of view. I have an example of this that I love. It's called The True Story of the Three Little Pigs by A. Wolf. This is an incredibly great book, and I found a really fun YouTube thing of it where it's read aloud on YouTube, and I have a link to that in the notes. Design and illustrate a new book cover for the story. Consider the themes, the characters, and important events. How are you going to visually represent the essence of the book? Reading journals are invaluable tools that can transform your homeschooling experience. By providing a platform for active engagement, critical thinking, creativity, and self-expression, reading journals ignite a passion for reading and lay the foundation for a lifelong love of reading. I would love to hear how you incorporate this valuable tool in your home and what benefits you and your child experience. The movie quote this week: "I is reading it hundreds of times," said the BFG, "and I is still reading it and teaching new words to myself and how to write them. It is the most scrump-diddly-yumptious story," in the BFG. If you are hearing this message, you've listened to the entire episode, and for that, I want to send you a huge thank you. Please leave me a comment or review and share with other moms you know. Get in touch in the comments or on Kara's social media networks.